Thank you for staying with us right here on Good Morning Kenya. Now we get into Family Check, and our topic of discussion today on Family Check is the new Act, the new Children's Act of 2022, which was repealed from the Act of 2001 rather. And joining me for this particular discussion is Annalyn Sebastian, who is a dispute resolution lawyer, and on my far right is Mr. Leonard Chumo, who is the Executive Director, Early Start Africa. Welcome to the program. Good morning.
Thank you.
You're doing good this morning?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
How are you
If you
doing?
can just go straight into talking about some of the additions in this new act.
Okay. Thank you very much, Vivian, for this opportunity. Like you said, my name is Annalyn Sebastian. I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. The new Children's Act, number 29 of 2022, was enacted into law on 6th of July, 2022. And it has brought with it immense changes as compared to the Children's Act number 8 of 2001. And some of these changes include the best interests considerations. Remember, the law is very clear that in all actions concerning children, all individuals and institutions alike are required to have at the back of their minds the best interests of the children. So they have enlarged the considerations, which they have spelled out in section 95 of the Act, as well as the first schedule to the Act. Secondly, the Act provides for the rights of intersex children, which was previously not there in the previous Children's Act. The Act has also simplified the adoption process. It gives room for kinship adoptions, whereby if, let's say, a parent passes on, then the relatives of that child can adopt that child. Secondly, if the parent is not able to take care of the child, then the relatives can also adopt that child. It has also simplified the adoption process, and it makes provision for alternative family systems such as foster care, guardianship. And another thing that it seeks to do, and what was in the news last week, was that it seeks to phase out the charitable children institutions, popularly known as children's homes, with a view to reintegrating these vulnerable and needy children into the society through family-based systems. Yes. So
those are some of the additions to this particular new act. And if just to you, if you may get us through the rights of every child in this Kenya. What are some of the rights?
So the background of the rights of children, is borrowed from different instruments, and I think one of the fundamental one is the United Nations Convention on the Right of the Child, 1989, and then we have the African Charter on the welfare of the rights and welfare of the child. Then we have the Constitution, 2010, Article 53. I think those are some of the fundamental sources of the rights of the child. And to the extent that the Act 2021 has articulated those rights, I think it is an attempt to domesticate some of those regional, international aspirations for children. And in a few cases we shy out from being very articulate in how those rights will be achieved, but you've seen the rights to registration of birth, right to a name, right to quality education, right to parent care, family care. And I think that's where we're borrowing from the deinstitutionalization. We're trying to have a conversation that every child has a right to parental care. And in instances where that's possible, we're trying to retrace instead of rushing into placing children in foster care or children's homes. We're looking, is it possible to have a family setup which is the most natural home for any child? Then, rights protection of the child, their privacy. My colleague talked about gender issues, the right to expression, freedom to choice, and so on. So I think there's an expanded list of the rights and privileges that a child is entitled to in this country. And I think for me it's an exciting time for our nation and for our children. What remains, again, is now how do we realize those rights?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On the bit where it's actually in the Constitution that every child has a right to parental care and protection, but we see so many street children on the streets of Nairobi and every particular county in this country. So concerning that, I mean, who is responsible and what should be done to avert that?
Let me also cite a new development in the children's sector, a nurturing care framework, which was adopted by the World Health Assembly in 2018. Mm-hmm. And it addresses the all community, all governments, all people approach. So issues such as existence of children and families on the streets and circumstances where they're not cared for, I wouldn't be very simplistic and say it's a problem with the government, it's a problem with the families, it's probably a moral issue, it's a legal issue, it's also our conscience. Nelson Mandela, said famously that you can know the heart or the consciousness of a society by the manner in which they treat their children. Mm-hmm. So as we continue to see children on the streets and no one cares, yeah. It's the image of who we are as a society. The county governments that should be responsible. Our families also need to know that children have a right to protection and care. They can't use them to collect money on the streets. It's illegal. Mm-hmm. And so enforcement of the act needs to be very intentional. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And some of these children actually do have parents, it's just that they're on the streets, but it's not like they have absolutely no one to care for them. So maybe if you can get into some of the responsibilities that parents have. Yeah, if you may take me through that kindly.
Okay. By law and even morally, a parent is supposed to provide for the child, and provision in this respect refers to shelter, education, mm-hmm. clothing, and medical care. Mm-hmm. So it is illegal for a parent to use a child to solicit money. If a parent is using a child to earn money, a child in this regard is anybody who is under the age of 18, then that amounts to child labor. Mm-hmm. And the parent ought to be prosecuted for that. Also, the government provides free primary education. Mm-hmm. So it is imperative upon each and every parent to ensure that their child is in school. And even if it means a parent doing menial jobs to put that child in school, then I would encourage each and every parent to ensure that they provide the basic or the bare minimum for their children. Mm-hmm. Children also have a right to play. They have a right to engage in co-curricular activities, and that has been enshrined in the new Children's Act. You find, apart from the basic education which a child gets in school, mm-hmm. if a parent can afford that, the parent can also enroll or engage the child in activities such as football, swimming, ballet. Such co-curricular activities equip the child with life skills which will be beneficial in the long run. If you look at the way the world is evolving, a child needs more than just education. Mm. They need to be equipped with skills to make them globally competitive. Mm-hmm. Yes, and also a child is entitled to a balanced meal at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When it comes to provision, yes. What happens to the parents who can't really provide? When someone's parent or when these parents have no ability to provide for their children whatsoever, probably because they've lost their jobs or maybe in other circumstances, they are not, they are differently abled, so probably they don't have the opportunities that maybe some of us have. Is there any well put out, anything that is put out well, anything that is well put out rather to talk about that? Like, is there something that is
currently not really. Actually, such children end up being at the mercy of well-wishers, which is very unfortunate. Some end up at charitable organizations. But if you look at the New Children's Act, such children are treated as children who need care and protection. So there's going to be a fund that is going to be created so that such children can be provided for. If, for instance, the parents are differently abled, they're not able to even physically take care of them, then these children will be placed under alternative family services. For example, let's say foster care, where they'll be placed with a family that the social worker deems is suitable, and they will be provided for. But as we speak at the moment, such children are either at the mercy of well-wishers or the CCIs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Those who are called vulnerable children, if you may just help us understand who are some of these vulnerable children.
So vulnerability varies, and for children, it can be circumstances where they are orphaned, they don't have an immediate parent or relative to take care of them. There may be children that are differently abled, and so that places them in vulnerabilities to access services, programs, education, and so on, use the road, crossing the road, and so on. There may also be children whose parents are, mentally challenged, or they are in, for example, institutions such as prisons, and so the children are basically categorized as vulnerable because they need additional care, extraordinary care outside of the usual care of a parent. And I wanted to add, the question you raised about what happens to children when their parents are not able. It's, and world over, one of the things that societies attempt to be very clear is a child comes to this world without the baggage, and it's up to the society. If you've invited the child, and you need to give them the rights, the privileges for them to be a child. And so it does not envision discrimination to say, well, because you don't have a parent, so it's okay for you not to have access to nutrition or health services or education. The rights articulate that anyone who is a child below age of 18.
I'll have to cut you short on that. We have a commercial break that we need to take right now, but don't you go too far. We'll be back to continue with this conversation. Welcome back to Good Morning Kenya. Now, before the break, Mr. Leonard, you were just describing to us who exactly are vulnerable children.
Yes, thank you. And I departed from the point of saying every child below, and the definition of a child in our act here is any person below the age of 18 years, has a right as to who provides for that right, or who invests to realize that right is something else. It's not up to the child. It's the society, it's the government, it's the family, it's the institution, religious institutions, it's all of us. And so it's very important, and I think that's one of the fundamental issues that is highlighted in the Act, that children who are vulnerable, they are highly threatened they are likely not to access the services that ordinarily every child would access. That emphasis need to be put in them. When we talk about free primary education, are we thinking about what about children with special needs or disability? When you provide capitation for every child, are you considering what additional needs some of these children have? When they leave school, where are they going? Do they have anyone to take care of them at home? How far are they going from school? And if they have disability, how do they cross the road? So vulnerabilities vary, but basically it is the category of children whose rights and protection and well-being is threatened in some way.
Yeah. I want us to get into the matter of adoption, and my question is, how easy is it to adopt a child in Kenya, and who exactly is eligible to adopting a child?
Okay. Thank you, Vivian, for that question. Adoption depends on how you look at it. It's a fairly easy and straightforward process, but that's if you meet the requirements for adoption. For starters, if a party wants to adopt, or if a married couple wants to adopt, the emphasis here is on the word married, because they have to do it jointly and they ought to have a marriage certificate. Because I would imagine it would be very chaotic where one party to the marriage wants to adopt a child and the other party is not for it. So it would cause tension in the marriage. It would not be good for the child. So for a single applicant, under the new Children's Act, a lady can adopt a male child. Previously, it was not allowed. The requirements for adoption, the first thing is that the first step is to visit a registered adoption agency. There are quite a number in Kenya. Some of them are, one is Bakna, the other one is Kenyans for Kenyans, Peace Initiative, KKPI, and then there's Little Angels Network, to name but a few. Now, one of the requirements is that the applicant, or applicants for this matter, must be between the age of 25 to 65 years of age. And they must be at least 21 years older than the child. So upon visiting a registered adoption agency, there are some forms that the social workers or the agency workers will give them, and there's some information that they're going to seek from the prospective adoptive parents. Some of them, they look at the residence of these prospective adoptive parents. Is their home suitable for the child? Are they able to provide for these children? For instance, if somebody is in business, they will ask for the bank statements. If their salary, they'll ask for the pay slip. Okay? They will also visit your home and do a home report. They will consider the fact that you have other children. Okay? So once they assess, they are going to prepare a report. So once the report is done, it is usually circulated now to the children's homes all over the country. As a prospective parent is filling in the form, they attach their photographs and they specify the age and gender of the child that they want. Most people prefer infants because infants are easier to mold, but others end up being matched with older children, but they still accept a child. At the end of the day, if it's a child you want and a child is available, most people take the child. Okay? So once you have been matched, the agency calls and notifies the adoptive parent that there's a certain child in a certain children's home who has... okay, let me just take you back a bit. Before you are matched with this child ought to have been declared free for adoption by the adoption agency. So once you have been notified that there is a child and you have been matched, usually they look for a child that somehow resembles the adoptive parent.
Oh, they actually do that?
Yes, they do.
Like the
features, the complexion. When I look at people who have adopted their children, the resemblance is so striking. And it's so striking. It's hard to imagine that these kids actually do not belong to this parent unless they actually tell you that this child is adopted, you know? Yeah. So once a parent has been matched, then what the parent needs to do is to visit the children's home and bond with the baby. So once you get there, it is the social worker who now introduces the baby to you and gets you to bond with the child. So you bond with the baby for a short while at the children's home, and then thereafter you take the baby home for 3 months, which is at the period that we call, it's foster. It's a foster period for you to bond with the child. And within that time, you're supposed to go back to the home to just tell them how you're bonding at least twice. And if you notice anything about the child, you're free to communicate it to the agency. You're also free to conduct a medical test on this child. So if within 3 months you feel that you have bonded well with the child, then you can now start the court process. And all adoption processes are lodged at the High Court of Kenya, the Family Division. The judges there are very, very friendly. Yes, and adoption is a very noble cause. Yes.
So within these 3 months, you haven't finalized everything yet?
You've not even...
So there's still a leeway of you deciding that, okay, maybe this is not the child I want to adopt? Or does the child also actually have a right to say that they didn't feel comfortable in that particular home?
Okay,
I'm sorry about that. We go to you for a while. Okay. In this new act, it also states that any child below the age of 12 years old, even when they commit a criminal offense, they are not eligible to be. They can't be prosecuted in any way. Tell me about this particular act, because I am imagining maybe a 12-year-old who has committed a criminal offense, like maybe it rarely happens, but maybe they've committed a murder. Then what?
So, you're asking as an adult. Of course, children make mistakes. What the act envisions is that there's a period of time in the life of a child when they need to learn. And what my colleague is discussing about adoption, strengthening family unit, improving the implementation of the rights, protection and welfare of the children, access to education, all those actually help to ensure that children are learning emotionally, socially and cognitively. And so to imagine that a 12-year-old child needs to go to a prison for murder and face the consequences of law fully is an overstatement. And at age 12, or say below age 12, a child is basically still learning from the structures and the systems of a society. And the burden is shifted to the society, that if children by age 5, age 6 are committing crimes, then it's probably an indictment of the society. And but it's laid the correctional or corrective measures for a child, which is for families, how do you discipline a child? If a child is found in conflict to the law, what are the necessary steps to take? And that's not just in Kenya. It's a practice world over that. Children are a special category of citizens of a country, and the manner in which law applies to them is not the same as how it applies to an adult.
Yeah.
And Vivian and Lynn talked about the adoption is a noble undertaking, and I wanted to, just revisit that a bit. That I do agree. The African social system encouraged collective responsibility for bringing up of children, and the famous quote, "It takes a village to raise a child," is basically, I think, our traditional way of helping out in raising up children. We live in a society, and there will always be people or children who would need assistance. And I think the law, as it is, has been written to allow opportunities for people to step in and help provide and care for the child bottom line is a child is entitled to quality care, protection, and well-being, and I think adoption facilitates that. What I would like, to appeal, however, is the conscience of the society, that if we strengthen the systems, the family systems, the communal systems, and I'm not trying to say we go back to the old ways of doing things, life has moved on, things have changed, but if we all understood that we have a responsibility for all our children, we wouldn't see so many children in the streets. We wouldn't pass children who have no families to take care of. We would say, what do we do? Do you have a room, an extra room? Would you apply to take care of an additional child? Families that do not have their own children, this is a huge opportunity to adopt a child and take care of a child. So I think it also speaks to the moral standing of a society to collectively take care of the children.
Yeah, and I want to take you back to the issue of punishments. And we know that the new act has also prohibited corporal punishment. Does this mean that children should not be beaten completely? And maybe what are the alternatives that are out there before we get back into the matter of adoption?
Yeah, corporal punishment or physical punishment for children is a no. And I know the late Professor Makoha, his soul rest in peace, was not very sure whether doing away with punishment, physical punishment in school was good for the children. And there are discussions around that. But science has proven beyond doubt that children who are subjected repeatedly to physical punishment or torture of some form, abuse, do not grow up to realize their full potential. It's effects on the brain development, neuroscience discoveries, it's subjecting them to stress. So the benefits of caning children in school or even in our homes is way below adopting alternative forms of discipline. And cane is the shortest way parents or teachers or society abdicates their responsibility. We need to teach them, gently, lovingly, caring. What our children need most is care. And then they begin to learn what is wrong, what is right. When you get to the place where you have to apply the cane, and people go to the Bible, they say, spare the rod, spoil the child. It's simplistic. We're avoiding the biggest responsibility of engendering values and disciplining in a way that demonstrates love and care for the children. CBC, the what's CBC? I forgot that. Competence-based curriculum is one of the most advanced local, architecture that helps to see children as able and can do from a very young age. And so we begin to have children as allies, as friends, as collaborators, and not objects that need to be inflicted with pain and to be instructed around in schools and in homes. So let's not punish our children. Let's explore what other ways can we discipline them, withhold certain benefits, but insist on teaching the right values, what must be done, why, and also explain why. Because we tell a child, don't cross the road. You don't tell them because the car will hit you. Don't play with sharp knife, but you don't tell them why.
Why not?
Give them the reason. They are scientists. They're discovering why things don't happen the way they happen.
So beating a child is a crime, punishable by law.
It's a crime, punishable by law, and we should all stand up for the rights of children. I'm not saying that we wash our hands and say it's up to them, but not caning. Caning isn't the alternative. And it's not just law, it's science. Putting them under pressure of stress, affects their brain development. Between the age of 0 to about 5 years, the brain, which is the engine of every human development, is growing rapidly. And what stress does is that it impedes the neuron connections in the brain that then later affect the behavior, development, and the education of a child.
Okay, okay. If we can get back to Annalyn, and on the matter of adoption, you were just explaining to us that, you know, before someone gets to adopt the child fully, they get the opportunity to get 3 months to go with them, you know, to have visits, you know, in their homes. And I was just asking the question of, what if the child decides that I didn't feel comfortable in that home? Do they have a right to not be adopted by the, you know, the specific person?
Okay. The new Children's Act actually allows for children who are capable of giving their consent to actually give that consent for adoption. However, in this case, if the child is, let's say, an infant or very young and not able to express themselves, then it would not be possible. However, the social worker also pays a visit to the home, to the prospective adoptive parents' home. So if the social worker notices that maybe the child is not comfortable or the child is mistreated, then they can actually rescind that foster process. Yes.
Okay. And when in a case where you have siblings in a particular adoption home, are there do they give more privilege to someone who's looking for more than one child so that they may be able to take the siblings? Or when we have siblings, they can be parted, one to be adopted in a specific home and another one in a completely different home?
Honestly, I haven't dealt with such a situation, but usually if you look at the best interest consideration, which it is a paramount consideration in all matters involving children. So I want to believe that even the agency would consider the circumstances of the other children, and if maybe a parent would be willing to take in both of them, then it would be in the best interest of these children, because separation would not be an ideal situation, because these are children who maybe have grown up knowing each other. And you know, adoption is permanent. Okay, it is not reversible. So I think to minimize the adverse emotional and psychological effects that it would have on the other child, then it would be an ideal situation if if maybe their siblings can be adopted together.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as we wind up on this particular discussion, maybe if you may just take us through, if they are there, are there gaps? Are there gaps in this particular act? Do we have loopholes?
There are gaps in the law, I guess, just like many other acts. You know, we need to always rethink modalities to evaluate, review them. Reviewing it in 2022, since 2001, I think was a long period of time. We need to do friendly review of the laws, and what I think is one of the greatest challenges in the Act is the administration. It's the Act cites the Cabinet Secretary responsible for children matters, you know, at a given time, but it's not always expressly known in a country such as ours. Who is that? Is that the Minister of Education? And most people would always think it's the Minister of Education, but they only deal with the education of the children. Is it Minister of Health? Is it the Office of the President? No one knows. So we haven't been very clear in, you know, progressively saying the responsibilities to realize the aspirations of this Act is vested on Cabinet Secretary X. And we can all stop there and say, there are many children on the street. What are you doing? Children, you know, there are institutions of children that are deplorable. Who is responsible? 33% of children are not in pre-primary school. Why? So the administration of the Act, I think, still remains something that needs to be strengthened. The council referred to in this Act, Council of Children's Services, is under-resourced, and there's a section on the financing, the implementation of the Act, but I will tell you for a fact that we are not very intentional in resourcing that institution to take on such a monumental task such as the realization of the rights of children. So we need to do more. And then thirdly, the relationship between the national and county government is not very articulated in this act. In fact, there are contradictions. There are acts from the Ministry of Education relating to the basic education and so on. The counties are also enacting acts. There are issues like childcare facilities, which is devolved, but the way in which the structures of envisioned in this act are cascaded to the county levels do not speak to the structures that exist at the county level. So what we will likely see is the rivalry of authorities and powers and or parallel structures that then would not act for the benefit of the child. And then last is the modalities to sensitize the public, to educate the population on the rights of the child, so that it is everybody's responsibility really to ensure that the children have rights. And I call upon the politicians, for example, to take this very seriously. Any nation that aspires to grow, to access social justice, equity, and productivity must, and I say must, invest in children. Yeah.
I get that. Thank you so much, Annelien and Sebastian, and Annelien and Leonard. Annelien and Leonard for joining me on this particular discussion. And on that note is where we end Good Morning Kenya today. Thank you so much to each and every one of you who has been tuning in. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing.